being in a situation or a predicament where one is motionless, where one is inactive and does not do, does not perform, does not react enough, is probably the most precarious and worst position for a person to be in, at least in terms of how God, Kiviyachol, created this world. God wanted us to be active. He wanted us to be responsive. He wanted us to be involved. And so this week I was haunted by something, a memory or a thought that has haunted me in the past and unfortunately probably will haunt me in the future many times over. And I started to think to myself, considering Gila's situation, considering her difficulties, her challenges, did I react enough? Did I or was I active enough with regards to responding to her, to coming to her, speaking with her, responsibly, asking her what's troubling her? In the middle of the night, did I trouble myself to get out of my bed and go to hers and see, what are you thinking about? What's troubling you? What thoughts are haunting you at this particular moment? How can I be of assistance? It is only natural for a father, particularly a father who lost a child, and a father who lost a child by suicide, to ask himself these questions over and over again. And I know that people will come to me and say to me, Shalom, don't beat yourself up. You did all that you can. It's not fair for yourself to do that to yourself. It may not be fair, but unfortunately, in the situation that we find ourselves in, grieving, bereavement, the loss of a child to suicide, it is natural for one to ask themselves these questions consistently. But at the same time, the reason why we're haunted by them is one never wants to think, I didn't do enough. I didn't react enough. I wasn't proactive with regards to my daughter's care and state. And we learned this lesson as well at the end of this week's Parsha. At the end of this week's Parshat Torah portion, the Torah tells us after Bnei Yisrael, the Jewish people, were successful in conquering Sichon and Og, sworn arch enemies of the Jewish people, the Jewish nation. The Torah says, Vayeshev Yisrael bashitim, Vayachel ha'am liznot el benot Moav. There are two things that are worthy of pointing out here. Vayeshev ha'am Yisrael bashitim, Vayachel ha'am liznot. Firstly, Vayeshev Yisrael. They sat. What does this mean? Says the Rashar Hirsch, referring to a famous medrash that many of us are familiar with. Bikesh ha'am leishev b'shalva v'lehanot me'ashalal biyado. The nation, the Jewish nation, as a whole, they wanted, bikesh, they had a desire to sit and to do nothing but to enjoy their booty. All of the looting, all of the treasures that they looted as a result of their victory over Sichon and Og. They wanted to just sit back on their laurels and enjoy that booty, enjoy that pleasure. Sitting. Vayeshev Yisrael. Says the Midrash, whenever the Torah uses the concept of Vayeshev, to sit, it means that tragedy is going to strike. Why? Because we as a people, we as human beings, are never supposed to sit. We're never supposed to arrive at a point where bikesh leishev b'shalva, we just want to sit and be left alone. No. We were created, Adam la'amel yulad. We were created to be active, to invest inertia, to invest our energies in order to better and to further the advancement of this world. And when we fail to do so, that is itself indicative of a failing within human nature. And therefore here the Jewish people wanted to sit. That was a terrible tragedy. As a result of that, Vayachel ha'am liznot. The nation were promiscuous. They were wrapped in and they were completely absorbed by the women of Benot Moav, and sure enough, as we know, they behaved promiscuously through idolatry and through various promiscuous relationships, and as a result they sinned and were punished. And so sure enough, what we see from here, says the Rashar, here's a tremendous thing. Not only the failings of Vayeshev to sit, which in itself is obviously the main problem and issue here, but also at the beginning, the Jewish people are called Vayeshev Yisrael. Israel, the nation of Israel, sat. But afterwards it says Vayachel ha'am liznot. That nation started to behave promiscuously. And says Rashar Hirsch that whenever the word ha'am, that nation, is used, it is derogatory. It is promoting, or it is demonstrating that it is just those people, not the special people, not the nation of Israel, but that nation, as if to give them disregard, disrespect, and it's indicative of the fact that the nation behaved improperly by being passive, by not being active. When a person suffers from mental health, one of the greatest threats to their existence, when a person is in depression, or when a person has gone through a trauma and therefore is handicapped and paralyzed from being able to move forward, from being able to react as such, or from being able to inculcate themselves into human society, into society at large, and to be what we would call a productive or contributing or contributor to society. One of the most frustrating things for that person is vayeshev. They are sitting. They are idle. They are incapable of moving. They are incapable of demonstrating to the world at large, but more importantly to themselves, that they can be and are productive and have that with which to contribute to this world. And therefore it is so important with regards to someone who is suffering from mental health that we infuse in them belief in themselves, and that we help them understand that it is not healthy to vayeshev, to sit, but do anything in our power to promote their inertia, to promote their energy, and to promote their capabilities. Lashevet, to sit, is something that we should never subscribe to, not as individuals, not as people who are suffering, and certainly not as a nation at whole. Being a pro-activist, being involved, being immersed, being responsive is the Jewish message. And therefore, that is why and I'm not touting myself, but that's why I try to, as a reaction to Gila's death, where she can no longer be active, where she is yeshev, unfortunately sitting in a place that is eternal, but not in this physical world, I therefore respond by being proactive, by going out and responding and contributing and trying to break those stigmas and trying to remind people that we must be involved, that we must help those around us. Hopefully, as a result of that, we can and should be able to make an impact. That is the Torah way, that is the Jewish way, and that is the Gila way. Shabbat Shalom. Thank you once again for joining us. Please remember to consider subscribing to the page below and send me your comments. I will get back to you. Have a great day.